Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks, James, coming on. You're probably still a bit jet lagged from the weekend.
No,
So,
we're fine.
James and his brother came up here. Flew up Thursday, was here Friday, Saturday. So, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Thank you, Paul.
Yep. And as we were saying before, James is actually, because we live so far away, we do distance education, and James is the area teacher for our children. And so James and his brother, who's the principal of the school, 1,500 students, distance educated Christian school. It's called Faith Christian Distance Education School. So we were very blessed to have them up here. And while James was here, we got to share a lot of stories. And this guy has an amazing story of what these guys are doing now is just beyond remarkable. But the story of how they've got there is just amazing too. Is probably just as remarkable. So thanks, James, for coming on.
No worries.
And
pleasure.
So you live on the Gold Coast now?
Yes, I live on the Gold Coast. I haven't always lived here. I was born in New Zealand back in 1973. We lived all over New Zealand because my dad was on the Maui pipeline. So I don't think I stayed at one school for more than a couple of years. More recently, I've lived in South Korea for 6 years. And of course, I've lived here on the Gold Coast as well.
Yeah. And while you're in South Korea, that's where you met your wife?
Actually, no, I went to South Korea for 1 year. And that was sort of to, where does my story begin? That was sort of to, kill some time. And I went there for 1 year and I just fell in love with the place. I came back to Australia. I went to Cairns to do an English teaching course. Part of that course was to do some training classes. And so the students got free English classes. And I was just being friendly. But to cut a long story short, my wife was one of those students. She's Korean. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Honest intentions, honestly. I was just being friendly, but she was getting used by a local restaurant owner on a 2-week trial period. And so I went down there and sort of started questioning the manager of the restaurant a bit. So she got her job, but it wouldn't have been pleasant. So I guess the relationship grew from there.
Yeah. So what was life like for you growing up, James? Your father was from Australia, is he?
Yeah, my dad's Australian and my mum's Dutch, and they met on a cruise liner way back when. Growing up for me, I don't remember a lot. You know how some people can remember, quite a few of them childhood memories. I tend to just remember plenty of the good ones. But even then, when I share them with my brother and that, he kind of goes, nah, it wasn't like that, mate. It was actually like this. So growing up early on, I remember my mum and dad used to fight a lot. So I remember them throwing plates and knives and things at each other. I also remember one day hiding under the bed because of that. I also remember once Mum called the police and the police had Dad handcuffed in the little garage just by our house, and I could see in, and I thought, what's going on? Because I really love my dad, I love my mum. What's going on? And so I have lots of memories like that. but yeah, there was a lot of fighting definitely going on there, and a lot beforehand that apparently I can't remember.
And so you end up moving to Australia?
Briefly, yeah, because my mum became a member of a cult called the Rosicrucians, and through that she met a guy. His name was John, and so she went over to Australia once, and then came back, and she had a little office at the back of the house that nobody else was allowed in, because it's where she did her sort of Rosicrucian studies or cult stuff in there. And but she was secretly packing bags. And then one morning when Dad went to work, we didn't go to school. She just scooped us all up in a taxi, took us up to Auckland, jumped on a plane. And I remember landing in Sydney and going and sleeping the night at my grandma's house. I can remember the smells and everything, and that. So I remember a lot of interesting things like smells. So we lived in North Ryde, and Mum and that guy John and my two brothers, Jackson and Jason, we all lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, which doesn't sound that bad, but one of the rooms was known as a sanctum. And we had to do like these studies every morning. For a while there, John, he claimed to be like a world-class boxer and things like that, which I think was a load of rubbish in the end. He worked at the local sawmill actually, and I think they were trying to get my oldest brother Jason in good with them, and they often took Jason out to places, and they locked Jackson and I in the apartment alone. We slept on a 3-level bunk in the little room. Yeah, I was telling you the other night, I remember once we went for a walk through the forest, and I got mosquito bites all over my legs. And that just traumatized me so much. I remember lying on my back with just itchy bites all over my legs and stuff. But I think I blacked out partway through. I remember getting beaten and stuff like that, like with the jug cord, like old jug cords, and like they're computer cords now, the same kind of cable, but they would be melted on the element of the oven, so we'd get whipped with those if we were naughty. I didn't have a dad, so it's rare. Through my teaching career and through my own experience, I really think it's important for a young boy any child to have both mum and dad, and because I didn't have a dad, I was just such a tearaway at school in Australia. I remember them trying to bribe me with toys and everything. They didn't know what to do. I remember once my brother Jackson got hit by a car and was put in a coma in the hospital. Once I fell off the playground and broke my arm. So things weren't really going that well for Mum, as far as being able to look after her boys, because we were all tearaways. And then Dad finally tracked us down, and then the sort of court battles and custodies all started. And I remember, is this okay, Paul, to keep going on this track?
Yeah, you're going well, James. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so all I really remember of that is 3 things. First, I remember when Dad did have a time with us, I remember him trying to take us to see Olivia Newton-John Xanadu in Sydney, the show. But mate, the queue went around the block, so there was no way we're going to that. And I was really disappointed because Olivia Newton-John, she's my idol. You know what I mean. She's a bit of a legend, eh? But anyways, and I also remember then one time when Dad came to pick us up, this bloke John sort of telling Dad to stand off, back off. There's the government house in the main street in Sydney there. I can't remember what, the courthouse or something, but I remember him running up and going, stand back, Dad, like this, or stand back, Jack. I will walk the kids to you type thing. And I was wondering what was going on.
Did you have many friends, James?
Oh, I had no friends then. I don't remember anyone. Nothing like that. Just my brothers, really. But even then, we were all mixed up in the head, man. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
And eventually your mother did a deal with your father.
Yeah. So I remember the lawyers asking me who I loved more, my mother or my father, and that. And I think I couldn't answer that. And then, yeah, so we all ended up going for just a 2-week holiday in New Zealand, at which time Mum, I don't know whether there was obviously a settlement custody deal made where Dad had to sell his houses and things and give them to Mum. And then I remember on that holiday in New Zealand getting a letter, and the letter said that Mum hopes that one day she can see us again, but that's the end. For now, we would be best with Dad. And I remember just crying, going, oh, I'm never going to see Mum again,
And how long was it? How long was it till you saw your mother?
Yeah, so for 17 years, I had no contact with my mum. So those were pretty rough 17 years, even though Dad hooked up with another lady who I clinged on to as a bit of a mother figure. And she's still around today, so bless her, she's lovely. But you know, I remember listening any sort of emotional songs and things about missing you and where are you and things like that. I'd always break down and cry because I'd always miss my mum. And all of this sort of stuff just messes up and plays with your head a little bit. Yeah, I remember Dad.
When did things start turning around for you, James? Like to me, this was the amazing thing. I've got this picture of the high school principal and you being the area teacher, and then you guys start talking about your life growing up. It was just like it took me a while to. So what you? Yeah, so there must have been a turning point in your life where things started turning around for you.
Like I said, the sort of things that happen to you at a young age just mess you up in the head a bit. And I was always picked on at school, I guess, because I was socially, and unable to integrate. But yeah, sort of right up until probably about 2009, I had gone through. I had gone through one marriage, and in 2009, my second marriage was on the rocks. That was with my Korean wife. And we were living in Korea, and I was living just, a life for myself. So to the point where my upbringing had caused me to be just a lustful, sinful man, basically. I did horrible things and really hurt God and hurt the people around me. I hurt my wife. In fact, in the end, I just sent my wife back to Australia because she wanted to do a nursing degree. I said, okay, you go back to Australia. I'm going to stay here in Korea. And I lived it up. And then some really important things happened from that point. My brother, he got beaten up, no fault of his own, and his wife, through that, asked God to deliver me. While I was in Korea, I went on vacation and I almost died in a scuba diving accident. And then I just one day, funny enough, I lost my iPhone. I left it in the toilets of the lecturer's lounge where I was a lecturer at a university, and that was the end of that. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I just realized at that point I was just burning the candle at both ends. I was just leaving a wake of destruction behind me. And I remember standing on the subway, and for some reason I was listening to the song I Surrender All, and I just broke down and I said, Lord, I don't know what it means. I don't know what it means, but I want to surrender all, because all I do is hurt people, and I hurt you, God, so help me. And you know what? From that point on, God brought people into my life to help me. I remember being on the phone just saying to my brother, I'm so sorry for the things I've done to my wife and to all the people who love me. And he said, you need to give up your job and come back to Australia. And I did. And as soon as I got back to Australia, he brought just beautiful people into my life that really helped me get a solid foundation in my Christian walk. I had a friend who was a Seventh-day Adventist and a scuba diver, and he really helped me get on track with the Word. Yeah, so that would have been the turning point in my life, that I can honestly say I made a commitment to the Lord, and I wanted to turn my life around. And because of the things I had done, especially to my marriage, and that it wasn't easy. I remember often my wife and I would get to a point where we go, oh, she would go, well, you go back to Korea then, and I'll stay here, and things like that. But we hung in there, and God really honored our commitment to him. And, you know, he said, you know, anything that the Lord has joined together, let no man separate. And you know what? It really, probably the point where it all settled from a very turmoil season was I went scuba diving one day, and I lost my wedding band, and I lost it down at the gravel car park at the Seaway. And that wedding band, when I was in Korea and before Korea, I never wore it, because it always was a symbol of my marriage to my wife, and I didn't want people to realize that. But when I came back to Australia, I wore it, but I lost it in the car park scuba diving. And the next day I realized it was gone. And you know, Boyong, my wife, she tried not to look upset about it, you know, and said, oh, yeah, okay. And I said, well, I'll go and look for it, because, you know, I wanted to show that it meant something. So I was driving down to the Seaway, and I prayed to God. I said, look, God, I'm going to look for this ring because I know what you've done for my life and for my marriage especially, and I want to show that I love my wife. I got to the Seaway, and I got out of the car, and I walked over, you know, and this is a day later, remember, like hundreds of cars have been driving on the gravel and people walking. And I walked over to where I thought I'd parked yesterday. I looked straight down, and there was a ring in the gravel. And, you know, because it's scuba divers, there's lots of O-rings was in the gravel too. But I picked up this ring, and I brushed it off, and it was my wedding band. And I put it on, and I remember just saying, there was a fisherman there. I said, oh, I found my wedding ring. I lost it. Yes, I found my wedding ring. And he goes, oh, you better go out and buy a lotto ticket. And then I rang my friend Steve, and I rang my friend Pete, and he goes, oh, you better get on your knees and thank God. So I did. And you know what? I was driving home just amazed, and it was the first time where I really think God really spoke to me. And he said, you know, that wedding ring represents your marriage, mate. It was lost. It was in the dirt. It was gone for all money, but you didn't even have to search for it. I found it. I cleaned it off, and I was just weeping. I was just driving along Marine Parade weeping, and God said, you know what? Anything you ask in my name, I will give it to you. And so I've always remembered that if I do things in his name and for God, he's going to follow through. So, yeah.
That's so good, James. And now, what's your life like you're so busy. What's some of the things you're involved in now, and how did you get there? You know, like you're
I've been a teacher. I've been a deputy principal for the state school system, and a few years ago I realised I suffered depression and anxiety, especially around holiday time, where I was out of the school routine and that. And I spoke to my wife about it, and she said, "Come and see my doctor friend," because my wife's a nurse, and I did. And amazingly, I managed to meet the psychologist who had turned down head of Queensland Health job to run her own practice, and she immediately diagnosed that what was going on inside me was not psychological but chemical. So again, my upbringing had an effect on that, and they gave me some medicine, and you know what? Well, after 2 weeks, it just changed my. I was like, is this how normal people see the world? You know, because prior to that, I was trying to make everything perfect. I was like somebody running out into the motorway trying to stop the traffic and make life perfect, and it was just, sometimes I'd almost be close to making my life perfect, and that dictated how I felt about myself and about life and everything, but it was never perfect. And this medicine, and thanks to God, you know, I do give all glory to God. He brought these people into my life, and it cleared my mind. And to cut a long story short, you know, it cleared my mind so much that I could realize that money's not important. I don't need money, because I was on 124,000 a year as a deputy principal, and I don't need to make things perfect. I just need to rest in God. And at that point, I realized, man, my whole career is just trying to hold on to this Queensland education job. So one thing led to another, and I quit the job, and I came and worked for my brother Jason at Faith Christian School of Distance Education. And the moment I did that, you know, just these amazing things happened.
What sort of things started happening, Jay?
So first of all, in my everyday job, I get to work with wonderful families like yours. I also get to help kids who have had a hard time as well. But for years and years, I had been tripping up to Southeast Asia, so Malaysia and Sumatra. Sumatra particularly for the surfing and for the diving. And I was always drawn back there. You know, I'd get home from one holiday and I'd go, okay, I'm all traveled out. I don't need to travel anymore. And then like a month later, I just would have this great desire to go back there. And there was one occasion I went up to Sumatra and I tried to, you know, I made friends with a local, and I thought, you know, I'll start a dive resort and we'll reach out to the people and stuff like that. But fortunately, my wife realized that that's kind of me just in my own strength. So when I joined Faith, after a few months, myself, Paul Pardidi, who's our school's missions leader, and my brother Jason and I, we went for a 4-day trip. We went 1 day in Thailand, or 2 days in Thailand, 1 day in Malaysia, and then on the last day we went over to Medan, which is the capital of Sumatra. And I believe that's when just the most wonderful thing happened. And they asked me, "Oh, do you preach?" And I said, "Oh, yeah," because I had never preached in my life before. So I went to this church, and just as I was listening to the worship in that church and listening to the people pray, I couldn't understand any Bahasa Indonesian then, but man, it just reached right into my heart. And I remember just weeping, and then the Bible school students who stay at that church got up and sung me a song. And, you know, I remember recording it on my phone, but just weeping. And I just knew right at that moment, it was almost like when God spoke to me about the wedding ring. It was pretty much the second time. and God said, "You are home." He like literally just touched me on the forehead and said, "Man, you're home." And that afternoon we went to the Medan, the Tera Makasi orphanage, which means the thank you orphanage, and we met the 130 students there, and boy oh boy, they were so beautiful. Oh my goodness, they just sang and they were so happy. But they were living in the wake of the river next to the orphanage flooding, coming up and flooding all their dorms, and so all their beds and mattresses and the whole place was washed out, and it really broke our hearts. And so I made a commitment to go back there and to help them out. And yeah.
And you've done that a few times, and
you've definitely.
Been
So the first time I went back, I went with my two nieces and one of our school's workers called Jacob, and we spent 12 days there. But I feel like God got us to do about 6 months work there. When we got to the orphanage, it was more like Lord of the Flies. You know, the kids ran the place. And, you know, they were to the point where they weren't listening to the leaders, and they were bullying the cook and things like that. The place was a mess. So you know, the Holy Spirit just led me to go out, buy a gurney, buy cleaning stuff. We got in and me and my nieces just cleaned up the orphanage, and that touched our hearts a lot. I put in place routines for cleaning. We reinstated the young leaders at the orphanage. We showed them how to lead by example with a servant heart. And we put these things in place, like the timetable for routines and the rules and a reward system. And we did all of that in a very short time. And even for the last year through COVID, they've maintained this beautifully and they've kept it going. A lot of other work was done at the Bible College. And so just as I was preparing for about my third visit up there, COVID struck. And on that visit, we were going to put in some wells for the children because they drank really dirty water. And we were going to get some new beds for them as well, because I had raised some money through our school to do that. But COVID stopped us doing that.
But things are still happening up there.
Yeah, regardless of COVID, we did get the wells drilled, so the children have beautiful fresh water, and we managed to get 130 beds and mattresses for them. We even managed to have money to drill a well at the Bible College, and the project is to the point where the school wants to help. So the overall goal is to have an orphanage school, because the children, when they were able to go to a normal school, and state school, they were often bullied and discriminated against because of their orphan background. And then COVID struck, and so then my Indonesian brother and sister Fasali and February Man, they had to teach the children at the orphanage. So the goal is always to start an orphanage school, but Faith Christian schools cannot give money to an orphanage in Medan. We're a Queensland school. So as project supervisor up in Medan, I believe the Lord has told me over the last year or so, we need to create a revenue stream. I'm pretty sure that's what they call it, to establish.
What do you call that, James?
Revenue stream. So like money that comes into the orphanage to set up the school and then to pay the teachers and to keep it going over time. Yeah. So we need an outside business to keep that going. And I was talking to a couple of people at our school who've worked up in Sumatra before, and one of them said, you need to definitely talk to the head of the church there. Well, that's fine, because the head of the church is also the head of the orphanage, who I have just a real blessed relationship with. And I said, we need to start a business. And so a week later, or a few days later, I sent February Man and Fasali to one of the islands called Simalu Island. And the Lord was telling me, since last time I went to Simalu Island surfing, He just told me, this is the place. Something is going to happen here. I remember walking along the waterfront, and it was just like so obvious to me that something was going to happen there. And then I sent February Man and Fasali there. And February Man rocks up to the island at 5:30 in the morning, just felt the Lord telling him to go to this resort. And it was called the Salt Resort. And he went there, knocked on the gate, and the man said, welcome, welcome, oh, come in, you've got such a beautiful smile, come in, come in. And he goes, what do you want? And February Man said, oh, I want to buy land for a surf resort. And the man pointed to the point and said, I know the man who's selling that land there. And it's like 100 meters away, as the crow flies. And this surf resort that February Man went to is the surf resort that I used to surf at when I was there. And anyway, by that evening, they had negotiated with the seller and their family a price, which was 2/3 of the asking price. So we got a hectare of land for $23,000 Australian. And so
on the water.
On the water, right on the point, like you're sitting, that's right there. On the water, all the right 5 minutes from the airport, 5 minutes from the hospital, 20 minutes from the main town. Whereas on the nearest island, which is Neas, which is really famous for one surf break, it's 3 hours from the airport on dirty roads, no hospital. And here's Simalu, just sitting here as this beautiful untouched jewel, just this island paradise. And the Lord's told me and my wife, we just want to gift this to our brother and sister and work on a project with them. So,
and what's the project, James?
So on that hectare of land, we are going to build a surf resort. So we believe the island has, like, the hectare of land is right in the middle of a couple of very popular surf breaks, but actually down that 64 kilometres of coast are surf breaks that are just untouched. I've surfed out there before and just had beautiful surf breaks all to myself, and I'm just going, there's no one here, beautiful clear water, 27 degrees. I'm like, this is paradise, And so we're going to build a surf resort there. And today,
how many villas?
Looking at getting, well, here's the thing, we're going to build 10 villas, a restaurant/conference meeting centre, and then I'm going to have 2 classrooms and 2 bunk rooms as well. Now, the classrooms are for the students, because I believe strongly that for every bungalow we have, we'll have 2 students for each bungalow. And in the morning, one student will serve the guests, retrieve meals for them, do laundry, housekeeping, tour guide if that's what the people want, or just sit and chat, but really serve the guests' needs, while the other student in the morning is in the classroom studying English, hospitality skills, whether it's cooking or how to, clean up a bungalow or whatever it might be. So real hospitality skills. And then after lunch,
will those students be like from the orphanage?
They will be from the orphanage, and they will be local students as well, because right from the start, February Man and I, and as a team, we've decided, look, this is a Muslim island. There are no Christians on the island. None. We're the only ones. In fact, I know an Australian who went to the island, and he wanted to marry an Indonesian, but to do that, he had to become a Muslim. but this whole island is Muslim people. And so I said, look, we're surrounded by Muslims. We have to be open and honest. So right from the get-go, he said, look, we're Christians. We're supporting this. We want to build a surf resort to support 130 children in an orphanage in Medan. And you know what? They said, oh, that's fantastic. We want to help. We want to help. You know, we'll... And this hectare of land is 250 meters from the road. So we needed a 250 meter driveway to be constructed. 250 meters by 4 meters. We would have had to buy that off the owner. You know what? The owner just said, no, here it is. You have it for free, and we'll clear the land for you for $500. So they're just beautiful people. I knew that when I went there. February Man and Fasali just on that first visit said, we don't want to go home. This place is just beautiful. They're just lovely people, and we want to be inclusive of all the people, because we want to, whether it's a surf resort or even a lobster farm, which is also somewhere down the track with the project to generate money, we want to include the people. We want to be open and inclusive. We want to reflect Jesus Christ. We want to say we are doing this for the glory of God, and God doesn't turn his nose up at anyone, and he wants to have a relationship with anyone. But the best way that we can show God's character and personality is by doing what Jesus would do.
That's so good, James. Just finishing, is there a couple of things you'd like to just from your heart like to share with the guys, how you've done life, or what's key to you, you know, what's important?
Well,
a couple of things you want.
I think, you know, I originally, because we had to live back in New Zealand with my dad, he would drop us off at a Christian camp for 2 weeks during the school holidays. And in one of those camps, I gave my heart to Jesus. You know, I was a 7-year-old kid. I didn't really know what it meant too much or anything, but I remember dancing up and down this hill going, oh, I feel so light. They said my sins would be gone. I feel so light. And I remember that, you know, and I remember for years and years and years, right up till that 2010 experience where I came back from Korea, right up until then, my life was on with God, off with God. You know, it was all over the place. I did some horrendous things. You know, I did some wonderful things too. But I remember, you know, God, what I'm trying to say is, no matter what your life's path, you know, God always, when you make that commitment to him, no matter how old you are, no matter what state you're in, no matter where you go from there, God cannot turn away from his side of the commitment, and he won't. Sometimes he has to let go and let us fall into our mistakes, but he always has his hand on our life. I remember sometimes I was so drunk and wasted running across busy motorways and streets in South Korea, you know, at 1 o'clock in the morning. And the next morning, I'm just like, oh, man, how did I survive all of that? You know, I can't. And when I went diving, I mean, they wouldn't let me out of the hospital when I had my diving accident. They thought I had avian flu or something like that. And I was, you know, God never let me go. No matter how down I went, he always had a plan for my life. And that, I guess, is what I want to encourage everybody in. God accepts you. You don't have to be something before he accepts you. He's already accepted you. He loves you. He can't love you anymore. He can't love you any less. And he loves you all the way through your, you know, your mud and your dirt, through your high times, your wonderful times, through your low times. He's always there. And when you're ready to say, Lord, 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 I surrender all, he will bring the people into your life to help you. He will. That's what he does. He's not going to go, okay, and drop you in it, he will bring those people into your life. And you know, the other thing is, man, I was the most stingiest person in the world, because growing up, we didn't have a lot. So when I started earning money and I got a lot, I held on to it. And I remember back in, 2012 or something, just praying to God, Lord, you know, I'm like this with money. God, please gently show me how to give. Show me so I can give and serve you. And you know what, man, how it is now is I don't want to boast. I don't want to boast. It's all glory for God. But, we just find great joy in going, wow, look at the joy on those people's faces as we've given them hope. And it's just such a blessing. So God will, and he is still with me. I'm going through things right now that I need to work through, and I need to confront it with my brothers and my sisters. But he will never stretch you more than you can handle, as long as you're willing.
Yeah, that's so good, James. So much gold, and thanks. It's a great story, mate, and all glory to God.
Yeah, so everyone, just want to encourage you, God loves you all so much. God never lets us go, and God does want us to grow so that we can do the works to glorify his name.
Thanks, James.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Back over to you, Simon.